All right, Coach. I have a coach here from Falmouth High School from Falmouth, Massachusetts, Cape Cod. Uh, childhood friend of mine. Um, Coach, how are you today?
Good, thank you. Good.
Well, I'd like to thank you for taking your time out of your schedule. I know today was the first day of the season starting and tryouts, so I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
My first question for you is sportsmanship an important part of your coaching philosophy?
Yeah, it definitely is. I kind of treat, it's interscholastic athletics. It's a big part of our school. My background besides coaching is in teaching as well. So for me, it's all part of the educational process. And, it's something that, younger kids, you can really kind of mold them and help them get there. Sometimes as they get a little bit older, where you're dealing with high school kids, they're really filling themselves out a little bit. So trying to keep that in check and trying to keep the comments that they're saying on a field, all positive about their own team and pulling for their team is the goal. So that's something that I always ask them to do. Um, yeah, sportsmanship's a big deal. It's a direct reflection of you as a coach, as a school. If people look at you, with a lack of that. And there's been a few programs that we've dealt with over the years that it's consistently a problem. And usually nothing positive comes out of that. So yeah, it's definitely something I pride myself in trying to teach our guys.
Excellent. Thank you. My next question, is there any particular event regarding sportsmanship that might stick out to you the most from any of your experiences?
As far as like kids in a game, a situation like that, or are you thinking like more, or are you talking more like a bigger overall event?
I would think any of your any of your coaching situations, even if maybe it's not the varsity level.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've seen it. We've had a few. I've been lucky to coach a couple different teams and a couple different sports, and had a few students in the school that had some special needs that um, we were able to pull in to be on a part of an athletics team. It was a basketball team in particular, and one of the things that was great about that is seeing those kids in a different light. And when those kids whenever we got the chance to do and get them in the game, you would see like both teams, people in the stands, like the whole atmosphere would change. You could see a tremendous amount of sportsmanship on both sides, allowing those kids to be a part of it. And, you kind of lose sight of like the winning and losing part of it. And pretty cool to see that. I've been fortunate to be in that situation a couple times. And there's a couple coaches that I also worked with that had similar students on their team, and it was just awesome to be able to put those kids in and have them play and participate like everybody else. And yeah, definitely saw a few pretty cool moments of that in basketball. I was fortunate as far as like a big event goes to take a few seniors when I was well before my coaching time started. There's a sportsmanship summit that takes place at Gillette Stadium, and I had the opportunity to take some kids there as a representative of the school, and it was pretty neat to see how they did that. The MIAA puts that on, and they do a nice job with that. Bob Kraft opens up the venue, and they feed you and great, but they talk it up. And sportsmanship is, it's the theme of the day, so pretty cool. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Um, you might have just answered this, but how do your players respond to good sportsmanship principles?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think it depends on the kid. Sometimes, some kids, it's just a natural thing for them. It's very easy. It depends on where some of them have come from. They've played for other programs. Maybe they played for other coaches, and maybe that wasn't instilled in them. So it might be an adjustment period for some of them. So I've noticed that. I've had to speak to certain kids that, maybe just haven't maybe quite gotten that message in the past. In some cases too, it's hard because the kids are trying to, keep themselves at a pumped up level, and they just don't always know how to do that the right way. So, I think the kid overall, they'll respond. If you address it, they respond. If the response is what you're looking for, it's easy. If it's the opposite, then you have a conversation with them, and for me, it's simple. I mean, if you don't follow my expectations, then you don't play. That's usually the easiest way to kind of get them to fall in line.
Excellent, excellent. This next one, I might suspect I might know a story similar, maybe in the past I've heard, but have you had any issues with specific players, and how are they regarding unsportsmanlike conduct?
Yeah, I've certainly seen it. I had a group a few years back, and it was my first year as a head coach, and everybody always kind of says that that's kind of like the probably the most difficult year because it's a transition. I had them when they were younger at a lower level, but as you know, there was one particular incident where it was actually a player from another team, was a really good player, was kind of making some comments gestured towards us based on something that had happened in the game. And, I kind of looked at that like a little sideways. The kid's a really good player. He didn't need to say any of that. Everybody knows how good he is. Just go out and do your thing and do your job. And what happened from there was the same exact thing happened to one of our players in a different game. And he was saying the same exact terms and saying the same exact things in response to that incident. And after the game, we spoke about it as a team, and that was frustrating for me. I talked to the kids about having an identity, and it looked as though they were taking on another person's identity,
Yeah.
and it wasn't the right identity to take on. So you got to be yourself. Don't be somebody else. If you're saying the same thing somebody else is saying, be original. But that originality's got to be like, it's still in lines with the concept of being a good sport, being respectful. And that's so, yeah, I've seen that. And it's just, I think sometimes they just don't know how to handle the situation.
Mhm. This goes along with that. What types of penalties you might have discussed in your previous answer?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can say is if I've had to address it and a player doesn't understand it or doesn't own it. And, that's usually what you're looking for is that, there's a follow-up to that. I've had a situation where I had to ask a person or a player not to come back to practice the following day. Instead, we would meet after practice and have a discussion, and then we can go from there and see how that talk goes. And then, the goal there is to get on the same page, have a young kid own a mistake, and understand that they're not meeting an expectation of the coach, and we move on. But that doesn't always go that way, and you just gotta. I mean, it's important for me to stick. If I've been as a coach and I say, "Oh, well, I'll give you a chance," I'm probably not teaching that kid a valuable lesson. And it's tough spot to be in for some people, but you got to do it.
Hmm. All right. So this is building up. The next question is, what's the most difficult decision you've had to make enforcing rules or behavior issues on your team? And obviously, it's just a reminder about confidentiality of
Sure.
players'
Yeah.
names.
It's difficult when you address it and you're not getting the result you're looking for an adjustment of behavior. And I don't necessarily think it's a difficult decision, but sometimes it can be an embarrassing thing for the person involved. But I've been in a situation where the person just was not going to make an adjustment. So right then and there, you're done, sit down, next person's up. And it happens in our game in front of people, on the field. So it's visible. We don't get a lot of fans, so you can hear a lot of things. And, for the kid, it's embarrassing. And it's not easy for them to accept that. So it's a difficult decision, but if I feel like there's something missing there, you're not carrying yourself the right way, and I have other kids that are doing all the right things, it's an opportunity for somebody else to jump in, and that kid's going to have to sit down until they can straighten it out. So I'd say that's difficult, but you have to do it. You have to do it in certain situations.
All right. The next one, do the hard decisions get easier as you've gained more experience? Are you more confident?
I would say so. Because you kind of, I think it's important, you got to establish your expectations, your values, and what you're looking for. And whenever something goes against that, sometimes some things are just out of your hands as the coach. It's a rule violation, it's a school thing, it's something else, and I'm there to support the decision of the school or the decision of the athletic director or whatever it is, and it's just clear cut and dry.
Mm.
You hate to see it happen. It's not easy. It's tough to go through those situations, but if you've done it and you've been there and you've had to do it, as long as you're staying consistent with it, makes it a lot easier. And you just hope you don't have to deal with it too often. That's really it.
Great. Next is, are you familiar with the term gamesmanship?
Yeah, sure.
Like an example could be the hidden ball trick. I could think like the example from like Little Big League. There was one with Pop Warner football with the coach, center turning around, hand the ball, the quarterback walking to the coach, then taking off. Those are some of the lighter, more deceptive ones. Then I would think like maybe baseball could be possibly stealing signs, trash.
Yeah. So I'm pretty familiar with those. I've seen them. Are you looking for a judgment on them, or are you thinking, how do I feel about them, or was that part of the question? I just want to make sure before I elaborate.
I guess it's just if you're familiar, but then I'll be asking you another question in regards.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Move on then.
Okay.
So do you utilize gamesmanship as part of your strategy at all? And it doesn't necessarily have to be cheating, but like working around rules,
Yeah, so it's such a broad term, right? Gamesmanship means a lot of things. There's certainly parts of, I would say, like particular types of gamesmanship that I would never agree with, that I have a hard time with. I'll give you a different example of gamesmanship. I watched this happen in a summer game with my son's team. He was in Little League. It was a travel team, so it was another town, and the coach consistently was just talking through the pitcher, on every pitch. The kid's about to start his pitch and starts his balance, and he's coaching his kids, but it's clear that he's trying to coach through the pitcher to distract them. And at the same time, the same coach. Baseball's a unique game. You see timeouts when a coach goes out to talk to a pitcher. Our pitcher was in a groove, was kind of shutting them down, and he was calling timeout to talk to his hitter about the next pitch. And that just slows the game down. And the whole purpose of that was gamesmanship, to try to distract and get into a 12-year-old kid's head. I take problems with that's a problem for me. I spoke out about it and I said something to coach. It didn't go well, but it had to be said. He was notorious for that. He'd been called in front of there's a board that oversees, sportsmanship behaviors from coaches. He had been called to that board's panel over the years several times. He certainly had a history of these kinds of behaviors. So yeah, that kind of stuff. No, I don't necessarily go out to promote it, but if there was something that's within a rule, what we would try to do is identify it. For example, like the hidden ball trick, identify it so our kids know what it looks like. So we try to prevent it from happening to us. If it's within the rules and, it's something that should be probably coached. If we can pull it off, I wouldn't hesitate to do something like that. That's a weird rule because in some leagues it's just outlawed. It's against the rules. You can't do it. It's perfectly fine with me. I prefer it that way, but if it is allowed, it's a tricky thing, and you gotta, it's also something that you would spend, you have to spend time on it to get it good at it. And it's such a small thing that it might not be worth doing all the time, but it's a tricky thing. Stealing signs is something else. I know that we work hard trying to teach our catcher how to conceal the sign, but usually that's happening with a runner on second. And, we develop a system where they run multiple signs. I've had situations where we're not even asking the kid to do it, but I've got a kid on second that is like giving the signal, and I'm looking at him like, what's he doing? And I can see him, and he's giving his batter, the sign. It's very obvious. He's not doing anything hidden. It's like 1, 2, 1, 2. And I'm like, if you're going to do it, you got to do it from find a better system, because this isn't going to work. And, it's tough, because I'm certainly, I love kids that are headsy in games. I love gamers. I love kids like that. And I think there's some fairness in that. So I can live with some of it, but yeah, it's the other stuff, trying to get into a kid's head as a coach. If I'm a grown man, if I'm doing something to try to rattle a high school kid, then I need to go find something else to do, because that's pretty sad. So
Yeah.
that's how I look at that. But
All right. So the next question, I think you answered in your past couple answers, in regards to gamemanship. Do you feel that it's that taking advantage of rules or stretching the rules? Do you feel that there's if the advantage gained is ethical? I think you did cover that pretty well though already.
Well, it's interesting you asked that question, because I was thinking of something that I watched this, and it would be an example of that I would not ever want to see my kids do. It was a college game, and I saw the video. It was a great video about it. I don't even know who the school was, what it was, but they had a runner on second and third, and there's I think it was a 3-umpire system. So the umpires have certain jobs. The home plate umpire is watching home. The first base umpire is watching, I believe, what's going on at first base in case there's a play, and then the third base umpire is watching. I think he was watching the runner at third going home. So he's got his back to the guy from second base. And I watched it, and they had the kid running from second base, and instead of going around third and heading home, he just cut across the infield, and he was out of the view of the umpires, and he scored. And it was certainly something that was designed and coached. That's something that I feel strongly about is not okay.
Yeah.
So things within the rules, that's kind of, that seems to be pushing the rule to a point where you didn't touch third. That's part of the rule. You need to touch the bag. So, I don't know. I think it's within the rules is a pretty, it's a pretty fine line still. You got to be careful that you're not, begging for calls, begging for something. I think I just see that sometimes, and I'm like, kid tagged up at third. He clearly tagged. He scored. Everything was legit. And you got a coach, screaming that he left early, and it's clear that he did. I mean, there's times where kids do leave early, but it's the worst to see that. Like, it's within the rules, but you're begging for a call, and it's not the right thing. So that kind of stuff, I lose respect for people that do that.
So it sounds like you have a higher standard than the average coach, I would say, at least.
I don't know if that's it. I think I've been taught well. I've worked with some coaches that have that same kind of mindset standard. I mean, I'm a product of the guys that coached me and the guys that I coached with before I took over as a head coach. And as an educator, I don't know. I think that there's some coaches out there that aren't teachers, and they're not there to educate the kids. So, they might have different agendas. And that can be a part of it. It's hard to operate in that situation sometimes.
All right. Next, asks if you have is there any concern for players adopting the persona of opposing coaches that exhibit some of these behaviors you talked about? The tag up example, I think, would be one.
Yeah. I mean, certainly. And that's the thing that it's tough, because you got to break that mold. If you've had kids that have come from other programs, or maybe that's a part of the culture. But I can say we're pretty fortunate in Falmouth to get some really good coaches, and you don't necessarily see that, an example of that. I mean, I've seen it when we played in our youth days, and there was some coaches out there that would certainly skirt that line, and you learn that as a kid, and you're being shaped and molded by one person. It's problematic for the other coaches that get that kid that are not they're not going to want their kids to play that way.
Mm.
So it's certainly problematic. I mean, it's the kids not, I think that's the important thing as a coach, no matter what level you've got, you're setting that kid up for the next level. And I think it's, if you teach them the right things to do, right way to handle themselves, they'll be fine wherever they go.
All right. Winding down here, first of all, I want to thank you for taking your time. I know, like, today is the start of the season, and I know you coach both of your sons' teams as well. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Yeah.
I know,
Oh, my pleasure. I enjoy this stuff. This is fun.
Important. Do you have, and by the way, everything is in confidence with this. So I believe after my work is seen, then this will be erased.
Okay.
Is there any comments you would like to make regarding sportsmanship, gamesmanship concepts that you might not have covered? Anything that came to mind through our interview?
No, I think we probably, it kind of sparks that, sparks those other examples. We're going into a new season, full season for the first time in a while. So I think I took something away a couple of years ago. I think it's important as a coach to continue your education. So, I continue to go to clinics just about every year. If I don't go to clinics, I try to find, some sort of, whether it's a webinar or something along those lines, that anything that can help me be a better coach, I try to look at that. So I got a pretty good takeaway from one of those workshops where it talked about your values as a coach, and how to make sure that you express those to your team. And I've started that the last couple of years, and it really kind of helps out with a lot of those little things that come up, respect, humility, energy. Those are my top three. And they kind of say a lot. Humility is huge. Just, I see kids that, act like you've been there before, kind of stuff. You're beating a team by 20 runs or 10 runs, or you're not rubbing it in their face. You're not making it a joke. You've done it before, or you've been on the other side of it, and it's not fun. So I think just kind of coming back to that before the season starts, that has been a nice way for me to get the kids on the same page with me. And if they go out of bounds, it's easy to go back to that. We all looked at this, what I expect. You're missing it. There's got to be an adjustment, or there's, going to be some consequence for it. So I don't know. I think every coach should do that. I saw a pretty cool thing where they talked about, choosing your captains. I use those values. I give them to my players to read them. And I tell them, I want you to pick 2 kids on the team that best exemplify these values. And once you do that, the kids do that, it's so easy. It's like, it solves a lot of problems before they ever have it. You got high school kids, they're still young men, so they're still figuring it out and learning.
Yeah.
No, that's stuff. That's what I enjoy. So I appreciate you asking the questions. I love this kind of stuff. I can talk about this all day.
Excellent. Yeah. Baseball, I think, is probably the most transparent when it comes to watching players and coaches, because there's so much in between.
Yeah.
And, you can't hide character, or just know we grew up impersonating a lot of these players, just from the batting stances and what they do, and walk-up music and all of that. So well, thank you so much. I want to wish you luck this year. Hoping another tournament bid for you all, and I'll be seeing you down at the field, I'm sure, catching a few of your games.
Excellent. Oh, I hope to see you. That'll bring our crowd capacity up to like 8 people. That'll be awesome. Appreciate it. Yep. All right. Anytime. I appreciate it, Tom. I'll talk to you, and we'll catch up soon.
All right. Thank you, Coach.
All right. You're welcome.
Here.